5 dead, 21 wounded. More mass bloodshed in the Lone Star State. Will the Odessa shooting turn calls for change into action? Here at home, Harris County gives low-income neighborhoods a new edge in the competition for flood control. Is it politics or a new era of fairness? And on the campaign trail, allegations of racism aimed at those challenging the mayor. Is the outcry against so-called dog whistles justified or a ploy to rally black votes? I'm Greg Brugan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, legendary reporter turned investigative media consultant Wayne Dolcefino. Next up, legal analyst and Houston attorney Carmen Rowe. In the 3 spot, Jackie Bally, professor of political science at the University of Houston downtown. Batting cleanup, well-known Democrat Mike Collier. Next up, conservative attorney and Second Amendment expert Michele Maples. And closing us out on the hot corner, writer, educator, and radio host Antonio Diaz. Let's begin. What we all hoped would be a peaceful Labor Day weekend has been ripped apart by yet another episode of mass violence here in the Lone Star State. What started with a simple traffic stop morphed into a deadly rampage by a rifle-wielding lone gunman in the Twin Cities of Midland, Odessa. We know 5 people are dead, including the gunman, and 21 injured, many of them critically, with 3 police officers and a toddler among the wounded. Predictably, almost instantly, amid the outpouring of condemnation from public officials and politicians, came the outcry for gun control.
There is no reason that we have to accept this as our fortune, as our future, as our fate, and yet functionally, right now, we have.
Okay, folks, where do we go from here? I'm going to start with you, Mike Collier.
Well, first of all, my heart's broken, as is everyone's, and our hearts go out to the families and the victims, and we're very worried about what's happening in our country. And the question is, how do you solve the problem? And the best thing that I can think of is what we know from the oil industry. You know, the oil business is a very dangerous business, and yet we do it very safely, and there's lots and lots of elements to our safety program, and no one makes it safe. It all has to work together. So, yes, there's a gun issue, background checks and red flag laws, but there's a whole lot more. And what we have to do is decide that we want to act. I'm glad they're doing roundtables. I hope they act this time. And take steps and start experimenting and starting working to solve the problem. It's only happening in America, but we can solve it.
Okay, Michele, I'm going to come to you because what's under attack is the tool, the weapon. Is that wrong?
Well, I think what we need to look at is, number one, how many gun laws are already on our books in the nation and in Texas. And there are 22,000 gun laws. I don't think one of those 22,000 would have stopped a deranged human like this. And if we do want to have a serious and a common sense discussion about gun laws, then I think that's a 2-part question. Number one, we need to look at, is that law going to infringe on other people's rights? Is because this bad actor, is that then going to stop me or you or your wife from being able to defend themselves? So that's part one. Part two, is that law actually going to have the effectiveness, and is it going to work? And in my opinion, it's not, because people have free will, and it is easy to attack the tool. It is easy to demonize the weapon. And so we need to have a discussion about mental health.
Okay, 300 million firearms in America already. Is the genie out of the bottle? And I throw this to you, Carmen Rowe, because you work within the criminal justice system.
I do, and I think it's interesting. I have a couple of degrees, and I can tell you I cannot clearly decipher what is the gun law either in Texas or in the federal system. It's complicated because nobody wants to be intellectually honest about what we need at a street level because it's political. And so the roundtables are great, but we need to actually do something. That's what I think this event tells us. So 4 weeks ago, we were in El Paso. Now we're in Odessa. We need to do something, but I think we need to be, like a lot of things, intellectually honest about what laws we actually have and how they work in our system. Because in Texas, there's no law in the books that would have prevented what happened in Odessa or El Paso. There's no law in the federal system that would have prevented it. And part of that is because there's no laws that are directed at some of the education and regulation that we all think exist and hope to see exist in the the future, with our Second Amendment in mind, of course. But right now we have very little regulation when it comes to a lot of the gun activity that we see out on the streets.
Jackie, the governor will be under pressure to support red flag laws. He has not supported them overtly in the past, in part because of Lieutenant Governor Patrick's position that it will never get out of the Senate. Do you think there will be more pressure for a legislative action from the governor after these two incidents, El Paso and Odessa?
I would hope that the residents of Texas would look at this logically. After Santa Fe, the governor immediately went into action. He did make sure that there was a roundtable in place. He made sure that there were laws that were passed that put millions of dollars into the school system as far as protection, metal detection, and other capacities to try to prevent something that would happen in Santa Fe. So our governor is very specific when he looks at proposals, policies, and laws after horrific incidents like this one. As far as the red flag laws and other laws that are being thrown out there, again, it would not have prevented what happened the last decade. It would not have prevented what happened yesterday. And we need to make sure that we don't politicize things. We have to look at these incidents and try to dissect them. And when we come up with our laws and policies, address them specifically. Definitely mental health is something that we need to address. Again, the governor addressed that after the Santa Fe shooting. That needs to continue to be looked at and addressed. But we need to be specific and not politicize things.
Okay, I saved Wayne and Tony for last because we've done 210 episodes of this show, and on at least a dozen of them we've been dealing with mass shootings. What's your reaction, Tony?
I tell you what, Texas is making international news, and cities from Texas are becoming known around the world as sites for mass shootings. We have in the last month over 50 victims of mass shootings. Yeah, we can talk, but it seems to be the only thing that can happen is we got to vote people in who will do something about it. Which party that is, we're going to find out. But if we don't do something now, this is an interesting moment where we have to act, because in a decade, who will want to come to the U.S. as visitor or immigrant or any way, shape, or form? Additionally, why would people leave their homes to go to schools where that's safe, places of worship where they're not safe, movies, evidently even driving down the street nowadays? This is beyond a cultural mistake right now. This is going to shape how America is perceived, and unless we vote people in who will make a change, and again, I don't want to make it political, people got to think about this deeply and actually make some changes, and we'll see this election, next cycle. If we don't change anything, the American dream is dead.
Okay, Wayne Dolcefino, you heard the conversation here. What's your point?
So, I mean, I guess my problem with what Tony says is vote people in who will make a change. It's like, what's the change you want them to make, Tony? Because I think universal background checks is just a waste of time. 98% of these things have nothing to do with that, right? Has much more to do with, and people say mental health, I'll say crazy people, okay? There are crazy people out there. Maybe we should start thinking about sort of locking up some of the crazier of the crazy people, right? Like we used to do. I know it was barbaric, but maybe not such a bad idea. You know, at the end of the day, these shootings only make me want to buy a gun more. They just do, sorry. Because I don't want my family, I don't want my friends. I want everybody having the chance to blow the guy away if he starts shooting me. If someone pulls next to me at a light and points a gun at me, I want to point my gun at them and kill them.
But what I would add is that's the great question, is what do we do? So we need people to act and see if it works or doesn't work, because what we're doing is not working.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. When we come back, a rare admission from Governor Greg Abbott, who says his inflammatory language preceding the El Paso shooting was a mistake. Plus, Harris County adopts new flood control guidelines amid accusations of social engineering. Both topics after the break. Welcome back. Governor Greg Abbott is expressing regret for the inflammatory tone of his campaign rhetoric ahead of the mass shooting in El Paso. As we told you last week, a campaign letter mailed the day before the El Paso massacre urged followers to, quote, defend Texas against Democratic plans to, quote, transform the country through illegal immigration. Critics said the language echoed sentiments published by the 21-year-old gunman in his online manifesto. Thursday, Abbott admitted to reporters that mistakes were made while pledging to correct course in pursuit of unification. The governor's mea culpa comes just prior to a meeting in El Paso of the newly formed Public Safety Commission. Given the shootings in El Paso and now Odessa, how intense is the pressure on Abbott to do something? I'm going to go to you, Mike Collier.
Well, first of all, I don't accept this mistakes were made. If you're a candidate, you're responsible for what goes out under your name. Second, there's a lot of hate in politics, a lot of hate and mistrust in politics. That's one of the problems. That's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, that's one of the reasons why we have so much violence in our society. But the other thing, the larger issue is, why do politicians rely on hate and distrust? It's because they don't have anything else to offer. We just finished a legislative session. There's plenty to talk about. If we'd have done good work for teachers and retired teachers and property taxpayers as opposed to faking it, then we'll deal with all that later. The point is that politicians go out there and spew hate and venom because they don't have anything real to offer.
Okay. Wayne, is the governor under pressure to do more than just have commission meetings and roundtables?
So I guess, but I also a little bit disappointed that he apologized, and I just don't accept the premise. I'm sorry, I don't accept. Tony, I hear you from here. I don't accept the premise that it is wrong to say this state cannot be overrun by illegal immigration where the cost to our local governments is now out of control. We can't afford it. And saying that we are going to defend Texans against people who should not be here, I don't see what the big deal is.
I want to go to Michele Byington real quick. Michele Maples, I'll get that right eventually.
Call me what you want. Just as long as you call me right.
Hey, look, how much pressure from strong Second Amendment folks, the NRA, is the pressure on the governor to stand fast?
Well, it's a national conversation, and of course, we here at Texas are hit more at home. So we look to Greg Abbott to sort of drive that conversation. And I'm with Wayne. I'm disappointed he apologized. There is nothing about the statement "defend Texas" that incites racism or incites hate or incites any sort of hate speech. It is illegal immigration is illegal, right? And again, it's this sort of fundraiser memo that went out is really saying what most conservatives are thinking, that yes, illegal immigration has got to stop, and acting like it's okay to cross our border and come into our communities that can't afford it. It's just not okay.
Okay, I'm going to have to switch gears, another topic right now. 2 years after Hurricane Harvey dumped trillions of gallons of rainfall onto the greater Houston area, there is no issue more critical to the residents of this community than protection from the next major storm. This week, progressives controlling the Harris County Commissioner's Court changed the way locally funded flood prevention projects are prioritized by factoring a neighborhood's economic health and capacity to recover into the decision-making process. Supporters say the new metric will begin to rectify decades of inequity and neglect, while critics correctly assert that the altered guidelines will delay groundbreaking on projects considered vital in more affluent areas.
The reality is you have neglected the people of precinct 3 and 4, and I'm not going to sit here much longer and put up with it.
It seems to have been rigged in favor of certain projects other than others, because this is a very subjective standard.
And the difference between the first project being started and the last being started will be 2 years. This will be transparent, it is smart, and we hope it'll be an example for the nation.
Judge Hidalgo pledged full completion of all 238 projects approved by voters last year in the $2.5 billion bond election. Commissioners Rodney Ellis and Adrian Garcia insisted lower-income neighborhoods seeking flood protection have been chronically shortchanged by the federal government because of the comparatively low value of the homes and property new infrastructure would protect. Tony, is this a good deal? Is this overdue?
It's overdue, but I will say this. I feel bad for everyone that was affected by Harvey directly, because there's still people recovering. So first of all, that's hard. I know there's a lot of hard decisions to make. None of them are perfect, but I do commend the discussion for occurring, for being out in the open. I think this is way more transparent than previous administrations. And what I do like is that the new administration is addressing structural discrimination, because there's a lot of new voices that were not heard before. But again, there's no perfect answers. I like that those of us from silent communities before are now at the table and being heard. And I like that we're having the discussion in public. I think before it was behind closed doors and it shouldn't be that way.
Okay, Professor Bally, as you examine this issue, what's your take?
Well, first of all, I want to remind everyone that before Commissioner Ellis, there was Commissioner Lee. He fought very hard for his precinct. He brought lots of dollars into his precinct. So those of us who are saying that his precinct was neglected for many years, that statement is false. Also, we also have to remember now that there's a new regime that's come in with the Democrats having the majority on this commissioner's court. Of course they're going to change the metrics. They're going to change it based on what they feel the criteria should be. That is what elected officials do. But I would call on the floodplain administrator and the county engineer. We need to get their input to make sure that the projects that are now being shuffled to the top and the projects that are now being shuffled to the bottom, that it's not going to have a negative impact on the county as a whole. Take the politics out of it, look at our floodplain issues, look at our flood mitigation issues, and let's fix our drainage and our infrastructure problems.
Carmen, you have any take on this?
I do. I mean, if I hear it correctly, I hear them saying that the federal government is focused on this and we're going to try and focus on that to make sure we fill in all the holes. And if that's what we're doing and it's not about race and it's more about economics and what's best for the city, I don't see the problem. And so, you know, if that's what they're saying and that's what I'm hearing, I think it's great.
Wayne, you're shaking your head.
Comrade Hidalgo must have learned some lessons from China where they're doing all that social engineering. Look, this really makes me mad. You know why? Because I think we ought to fix flooding where flooding is the worst. What a concept, right? And when water, I live like a block from Ray's Bayou, right? The lady who lived in my house went into labor during Hurricane Harvey and had to be like rescued off the porch in 4 feet of water. The notion that water cares how much money you have, that water doesn't destroy lives no matter how much money you have, that water doesn't kill you, doesn't kill your dogs and cats, is one of the stupidest things I think I've ever heard of. Why don't we just fix flooding first in the places where flooding is the worst? Done, solved, no consultants.
We're talking about the damage, though.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Coming up, the mayor's campaign says he's the victim of racial attacks from his challengers. Our crew will take a hard look at the message they're calling a dog whistle. Should be interesting, so stick around. Welcome back. With the arrival of Labor Day and the acceleration of campaign activity, it generally signals. Mayor Sylvester Turner's team is claiming he's the target of racist attacks by his opponents. Now, as evidence, they point to this tweeted graphic depicting the faces of the mayor, his police chief, his fire chief, and his press secretary, all minorities atop the cargo area of a city garbage truck with the caption, quote, "Don't let the city go to the dump like Turner's Recycling," end quote. A reference to the revelation that tons of recycling have been improperly disposed of in landfills on the mayor's watch. Houston Style magazine calls it a vile, racist cartoon that candidate Tony Buzbee shared on his social media pages. The Houston Defender, in its editorial, asked question, is the message throw all the minorities in the garbage instead? Now, we should note both publications openly support Turner. Meantime, candidate Busby says his campaign did not generate the image. Question, is this a legitimate complaint by the Turner campaign or just a ploy to rally minority voters? I'm going to you, Jackie.
Okay, let's look at this. We have 4 black people running against him. One, a sitting council member who has the former mayor, who was the first African-American elected in the city of Houston, actively working to unseat the current black mayor. So to say that he's being attacked specifically for his race when you have several black people who want to unseat him is totally false.
I'm going to go ahead and go to Tony for a short break.
Yeah, because this is racist. Okay, whoever created this, you got the Anglo fella, him, driving the truck, and you got the 2 Latinos and 2 black folks in the garbage truck. This is pretty bad. Now, of course, it's on Twitter. You don't know who created it, but don't do this. This is terrible.
Wayne, is this silly?
What Tony said, yes, absolutely. First of all, there's almost, you know what screws up their picture? There's some white people in the garbage can.
Why are they recycled? Why you got to recycle the white folks?
And one of them is Catholic.
They're throwing away the minorities.
Oh my God.
Why you throw away the minorities and recycle the
Go
white?
ahead. He's commanded troops in combat and taken on corporations in the courtroom. Now, well-known attorney Tony Buzbee wants to leave the city of Houston. He's accusing the current mayor of whole-scale corruption and making the case to voters. The hot seat conversation is coming up after the break. Welcome back. Safe to say if you live in the city of Houston, you know the name Tony Buzbee. An extraordinarily successful attorney and Texas A&M Regent, Busby is running for mayor in a race that's about to intensify tremendously. With that, we welcome Tony Buzbee back to the hot seat.
Good to be here.
Tony, you say city government in Houston is corrupt and that Mayor Sylvester Turner is at the epicenter of that corruption. You've been digging? What's the best evidence you've got?
I've spent 6 months. We all know about the ICF contract. I mean, here's the problem we have in the city of Houston. It's been more than 2 years since Hurricane Harvey crushed us all. Only a handful of people have been helped. You may wonder, why is that? The reason is corruption. ICF, this company that was hired out of Virginia, who was run out of Louisiana for corruption, and let's think about that for a minute. If you get run out of Louisiana for corruption, you are the creme de la creme of corruption. They are being sued right now in Louisiana for their work in Katrina for more than $200 million. They come to Houston. 7 of their owners give $5,000 each to our current mayor, and then they partner up with the mayor's law partner, and he gets $6.7 million of a $35 million contract, and we're all thinking, we spent $35 million. What do we have to show for it? The answer is nothing. That's example 1. There's many. I'm going to give you example 2. There's a company called Aptim, A-P-T-I-M. This is a company that was supposed to be the program manager for the residential housing rebuild. This company billed the city $6 million and helped no one. They're finally, based on people like you who are looking into this issue, there was a few news reports, and all of a sudden the light gets shined on them and they run like a bunch of roaches, and then they bill the city $14 million and they've helped no one. You know why this is important? You know why this is corruption? Because the principals of this company, Aptim, have given the mayor $40,000 to $50,000 each and have raised him almost $1 million. If you wonder why we've done nothing to help people who were crushed by Harvey, it's corruption. At first I thought it was incompetence and some corruption. Now I know it's flat out corruption. And if we don't do something about that, I'm not sure how we can fix the streets. I'm not sure how we can hire more police and make this city safe. I'm not so sure that we can pay firefighters. I'm not so sure that we can do something about drainage and help those folks crushed by Harvey if we can't clean up City Hall in the first instance.
Recently, you talked about a handful of wealthy lobbyists, all major donors for the mayor. They have consistently won major city contracts through the Minority Women and Small Business Enterprise Program that's supposed to help disadvantaged Houstonians. Has the program been corrupted?
Let me just tell you, it's ironic to me that the mayor's campaign slogan to try to get himself reelected. Remember, this is a guy that's been running for mayor for 27 years and still hadn't figured out how to be a mayor. But laying that aside, it's ironic to me that his campaign slogan is lift every voice. When all of the minority and women-owned businesses that were listed in the 5 $66 million contracts for Hurricane Harvey rebuild, not one of them had ever even been contacted. Not one. The entire Office of Business Opportunity is completely corrupt. The mayor sends business to his friends. This individual who was supposed to be doing the Harvey residential rebuild, this Aptim, this guy named Bobby Singh, and people say to me, like, I can't believe you're naming names. I'm going to continue to name their names. I'm going to continue to name their names, and one of these names is a guy named Bobby Singh who has 22 open contracts with the city of Houston right now, is one of the largest campaign donors for this mayor, and is primarily responsible for the reason we haven't helped anybody who was hurt by Hurricane Harvey.
Tony, you've talked to a lot of voters.
A lot.
And you've talked a lot about pay to play. Is this issue resonating with them? And if so, why?
It has become, based on our polling, the #1 issue in the city of Houston. Here we are. We're at a crossroads. Are we going to be the city that we all hope we can be? The city that we aspire to be? A city of innovation, technology. A city when we think about what do we want to be proud of? Are we going to be the city that we're a little bit afraid that we may become? I say that everywhere I go, and people are worried about the city of Houston, and the primary problem we have is corruption at City Hall. If you go to City Hall downtown, it's dirty on the outside, but I promise you it's a lot dirtier on the inside.
Hey, look, the Labor Council, and you've been a big supporter of the fire union, the police union, the Labor Council, which supported the mayor in the last election, did not endorse him this past week. What does that tell you? What's your take on that?
I think everybody sees that the mayor's ship is sinking. He is sinking. His fight with the firefighters was not smart. He should have given the firefighters the raise that they deserve, that 298,000 people voted for. Picking a fight, challenging collective bargaining in court, pretending like he's not, but he spent almost $7 million fighting the firefighters. Enough is enough, whether it be labor unions, whether it be the churches, whether it be the business community. Everybody has seen the writing on the wall. This mayor is a failed mayor. He does not lead. All he's doing is try to get himself reelected. He'll do anything he can to get himself reelected, and we're going to prevent that.
Tony Buzbee, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, it's September 1st, and plenty of new state laws are now in play, drawing our attention the green light for concealed carry in many Texas churches. That discussion is front and center when we come back. Welcome back on this, the first day of September. Literally hundreds of new Texas laws take effect, including an increase in the legal age to purchase tobacco products from 18 to 21. Another new law that caught our eye was the legislature's lifting of the prohibition barring the legal concealed carry of a handgun inside a church, synagogue, or mosque. After the ambush of worshipers in Sutherland Springs and elsewhere, many Texas congregations welcome the opportunity to harden what has sadly proven a soft target.
There's a clear message to potential perpetrators that if churches across the board have people in the church that are carrying, that are licensed and are trained and prepared, then it is that much less likely that someone will attempt to engage.
Others have taken a different approach. The Episcopal Diocese of Texas has exercised the option to post signs banning the possession of firearms on church property. Question, will allowing concealed carry make our places of worship safer? I'm going to start with you, Michele Maples.
Okay, I hate to take the wind out of everybody's sails, but nothing changes. You have always been able to carry in a place of worship. Now, what this law has done is basically cleaned up the language of Texas Penal Code 46035, and that's the statute that says you cannot carry in these places. And on that list was churches, synagogues, mosques, places of worship. However, there was an exception to this rule, and the exception said that this does not apply unless there is a proper 30-06 or 30-7 sign, which is I can't enter with a gun sign, which stops us from entering if we're LTC carriers. So actually nothing has changed, just the language of the law has been cleaned up, so we don't have this you can't, but then there's the exception. If you see a 30-06 sign or a 30-7 sign outside of a church or a place of worship, wherever you go to worship, don't carry. It's illegal. However, at the end of the day, nothing has changed.
Okay. Carmen Rowe,
this is exactly what I'm talking about. I have a law degree, and I'm not sure what 46.0, the truth is that I think this is great. I think that common sense laws that everyone can follow and understand are important for people to actually comply with the law. And so I think it's great that they are allowing people to carry guns inside synagogues and places of worship. The truth is, if you believe that you have a Second Amendment right and that having that Second Amendment right makes you safer or feel safer, then of course it's going to make these people feel and perhaps be safer inside these places of worship. And we know from stories that we've seen that it could have been important and it could have made the difference in certain situations. So.
Okay, I did some reporting on this week. We all remember the Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. Talked to an expert who works with the synagogues. He says, yeah, I'm not going to name names, but there are synagogues in this town where people are carrying weapons. Wayne, you want to talk about this?
I just say amen.
Okay, Jackie Bally.
98% of mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. That statistic alone tells you that creating a gun-free zone does not make you safer. The fact that we are cleaning up the language, allowing people to continue with their lives, and if you feel safer by carrying, that's wonderful, because gun-free zones does not guarantee you safety.
15 seconds.
I don't think there's any policy behind it. I think it's pure politics. I mean, if you're a Republican and you want to go get reelected, you got to say something. I did something for the gun owners. I don't think that there's anything real to it. And I think you're going to see an awful lot of churches say no guns here.
Sorry to freeze you out, Tony. I'll get back to you, brother. Okay. Still ahead, Democratic frontrunner Joe Biden in a trouble again for botching a military story on the campaign trail. Plus, President Trump attacking Fox News and Fox News firing back hard. Stay with us. What's your point? We'll be right back. Welcome back. More rough sledding for the Democratic presidential frontrunner. Former Vice President Joe Biden is catching all kind of grief for his most recent telling of a poignant tale of a face-to-face encounter with a Navy captain who'd lost a comrade in battle and was rejecting a medal for heroism.
Four-star general asked me whether I'd go up into the FOB. Now everybody got concerned, the vice president going up in the middle of this, but we can lose a vice president. We can't lose many more of these kids. It's the God's truth, my word as a Biden. He stood at attention. I went to pin him. I said, sir, I don't want the damn thing. Do not pin it on me, sir.
Good story, but according to the Washington Post, almost every detail relayed by Biden was factually incorrect, with the ex-VP getting the time, period, the location, the act of gallantry, the military branch, the rank of the recipient, and the type of medal wrong. It appears Biden knowingly or unknowingly combined elements of multiple incidents and encounters with service members into a stump speech amalgamation. Of course, this is all fueling discussion as to whether the gaffe-prone 76-year-old is up to the incredibly demanding job he seeks. What do you think of this, Mike Collier?
It doesn't bother me. Let me tell you something. So I have a problem. I misplace documents. I do it all the time. And I say to the people around me, it's not because I'm getting old. I've always been that way. Joe Biden has always been that way. And this is benign. I mean, he's on the stump. He's inspired by a story that he remembers. He remembers it incorrectly. But he wants to share that inspiration. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong would be lying. This isn't lying. What's wrong would be bragging about assaulting women. This isn't that.
Okay, Jackie Valle, as you talk to your students and about this issue, what would you tell them?
There's a lack of energy surrounding Joe Biden. At first, his appeal was being the elder statesman, but now it's become more of a joke and a meme. Unfortunately for him, the more this continues, the more you're going to be looking at the gaffes, looking for mistakes, instead of listening to real policies that he actually could be talking about. And secondly, it's not just one thing to tell stories improperly, and these are his stories that he's lived through. But since 2016, we've noticed a significant deterioration in his mental capacity and the way that he articulates certain statements, including policy statements, the way he waffles back and forth. This is something that the Democrats are really afraid of. Insiders in D.C., they're very nervous because he is still the front runner by far, but this is going to be a problem if he is their nominee and he's actually on the campaign trail, the rigorous presidential campaign trail. This is going to be a problem for the Democrat Party.
Carmen Rowe, what's your take on all this?
You know, I think words matter, credibility is important, and this hurts the Democratic Party. I mean, you can talk about maybe it's just semantics, but the truth is we either are able to rely on him and the information that he's providing to us, or we're not.
Okay, Tony, no secret that Biden's not your favorite Democrat. As you watch this, what's your point?
Well, in a pre-Trump era, yeah, an unforced error like this might have cost someone their campaign or branded them. I remember Vice President Quayle spelling potato wrong, and that branded him as slow for the rest of his career. However, lucky for Biden, we're in an era where Trump has a daily gaffe machine called Twitter. So this is going to come and this is going to go. There's some folks that are speculating maybe it doesn't show that he's got what it takes for the long haul. He's been in the White House, so I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about is that this can reveal some sense of entitlement, which, in my opinion, that's what hurt Hillary. In other words, if you think you got it in the bag, you're not going to wake up an hour earlier. You're not going to go to the extra state. You're not going to shake that extra hand. And that's all that I'm worried about. Biden doesn't have anything in the bag. And like you said, he's not my favorite. I think he'll be a nice vice president again. But either way, I'll vote for the Democratic nominee. This will come and this will go. Joe's here to stay.
Okay. Michele Maples, as you saw the vice president, what went through your mind?
I just thought, well, at least the media is picking apart and fact-checking Joe Biden to the extent that they pick apart Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, I said it before, Joe Biden still is the most sane candidate for this crazy Democratic Party's candidate choice.
Okay, on to the next topic. Meantime, President Trump was attacking his longtime favorite, Fox News, accusing the organization of letting millions of people down, adding on Twitter, Fox isn't working for us anymore. Firing back with a blisteringly honest response was well-known Fox business anchor Neil Cavuto.
We don't work for you. I don't work for you. My job is to cover you, not fawn over you or rip you. Just report on you, to call balls and strikes on you. My job, Mr. President, our job here is to keep the scores, not settle scores.
Okay, like Johnson lost Cronkite, it appears Trump has lost Cavuto. Wayne, what's your take on this?
Well, my take is Cavuto is right. I mean, and if more media people would just remember their job is to report and not advocate, and that's why I criticize CNN so much, because at least on Fox, you know the difference between the opinion shows and the news guys. CNN claim they're all news anchors when most of those people are so not. It's ridiculous. They say outrageous things all the time.
Okay, Tony, I know I can hear you cheering from your house on the north side.
Best line was where he tells Trump that you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts. Of course, some folks say this is late in coming. I think the fact that he's doing an op-ed, delivers an op-ed so potently about freedom of speech, especially in an era where you hear the president saying that the media is the enemy of the people, that is wrong. One fundamental principle of the United States of America, why I love this country, even though half your panelists are always wrong, Greg Grugan, I respect the fact they have their freedom of speech, the exchange of ideas, and that's what folks are fighting for now. And that's what journalism's supposed to be, so hats off to Cavuto, but let's put the boxing gloves back on anyway.
Mike Collier, was the president trying to bully Fox News?
I can't say what the president's trying to do or not do. I don't understand the guy at all, and I don't understand people that like him, frankly. But I will say this, those of us Democrats have been very concerned about Fox and whether or not Fox is fair and balanced. On the news side, I've always felt better about it than on the opinion side. And Cavuto did the right thing. And I'm not surprised he did the right thing. And I wish all journalists would do the right thing, as he did.
Okay, Jackie Bally, as a professor, but also as a commentator.
Yeah.
When you listened to Cavuto, what was your reaction?
Whenever the president declared war, open warfare on the media, we saw just so many different stories, and not from Fox particularly, but from other different stations and newspapers that were inaccurate, blatant lies written about him. People like my colleague who says that they don't like the president, they don't understand him, and they would report things that their opinion as being factual when it was or was not, has really taken out the ethics out of journalism. People like you, Greg, are rare in these times. Thank you for doing what you do. So it doesn't surprise me that the Fox News will defend themselves, because out of all of the stations, at least they have been reporting more factual information than their CNNs or the MSNBCs of the world. But in the world of politics today, when the president has declared an open warfare with media, it's going to be very difficult for viewers, for anyone who wants to get actual news, to rely on a particular TV station and get their soundbite and think that they're getting factual information these days.
Carmen Rowe, I mean, Fox was said to be almost in bed with the president. And then the president comes after Fox News. Cavuto fires back. What do you think of this scenario?
You know, I actually think it's pretty comical. If you watch the Cavuto thing, it's a 4-minute tirade. This was a public breakup. And this was one party in the breakup who aired all of the laundry of their relationship. I mean, he didn't just say, hey, this is about integrity. He said, and by the way, you didn't say this. And by the way, you never did this for me. And you never brought flowers. And it continued for 4 complete minutes. And so I disagree with Wayne in this regard, where it wasn't about reporting. It was about advocacy for himself and for their entire station. And so, I think it goes to entertainment.
But it wasn't an op-ed. In all fairness, it was clearly an op-ed.
Michele Maples, last 20 seconds.
It comes down to journalistic ethics. You've got a job to do. Greg Grugan, you've got a job to do. You let us gather here every Sunday morning to give our opinions. That's what we do. The job of a journalist is to report the facts in an unbiased way. And that's it. That's it. I don't need, whatever his name's opinion, Neil Cavuto's opinion. I want facts.
Okay. Here for the facts. Still ahead, our panel answers the question, what did we miss? So stay with us. Welcome back. In this single hour, it's impossible to work through all the topics worthy of discussion. And that's why each week we carve out time to ask our team, what did we miss? Wayne Dolcefino.
MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell made some blatantly false factual claim about the president's loan documents being signed by some big famous Russian guys or something. That's the problem with journalism. That's why the media is under assault. They've lost the credibility, and it's really one of the real shames of the last 3 years.
Okay, to be continued. Carmen Rowe.
Category 5 hurricane in the Gulf. I'm hoping and praying for all those people who are about to get hit by Hurricane Dorian.
Hear, hear. Jackie Bally.
This past week, associate builders and contractors teamed up with Big Brothers and Big Sisters to build bookshelves for middle schoolers and high schoolers just in time for the beginning of the school year. Thank you to ABC for always reaching out and doing so much for the community.
Awesome. Mike Collier.
The federal budget deficit, which declined in the previous administration, is now going through the roof. It's growing much more rapidly than was even originally predicted. And now that we're headed into some difficulties with the economy because of an ill-designed trade war, the Republican response to the economic problem is more debt and deficits.
Wow, keeping an eye on that. Michele Maples.
Let's lighten it up. I didn't just randomly change my name. I got married. Finally found some poor guy that wanted to marry me. He's amazing. He is a major in the United States Army named Austin Maples. So that's my great news.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Tony Diaz.
Hispanic Heritage Month is coming. We're using this hashtag to demand people deliver art, history, and culture for Hispanic Heritage Month. If they deliver, celebrate them. If they don't, protest them. Hispanic Heritage Month is here. Let's celebrate our community now.
All right, way to go, Tony. That's all the time we have. Thanks to our team. And remember, keep it right here. Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace is coming up at the top of the hour. Be sure to join us next week for the latest edition of What's Your Point. Have a great week.